The Cygnus launch vehicle is out on the pad at the Wallops flight facility. The preparations for Sunday's launch is continuing. And the work to get Cygnus ready for the launch didn't just get going when the rocket was rolled out to the pad. Recently, I spoke with Floyd Booker, NASA's Cygnus II visiting vehicle lead, about what's required to get these cargo ships ready to go and how far in advance they actually start preparing for any given mission.
Well, the program starts strategically. We start years out. We look at all the vehicles that plan to come to station and the various crews and what science is planned for them. And with that, we develop a manifest for each visiting vehicle. And so it's kind of my job to coordinate and manage the requirements as the cargo is identified and developed and delivered, and then of course installed in the vehicle.
And I expect that those requirements and those manifests change over time.
They don't
change.
They're
not static.
Right. Strategic is years. Tactical, at about a year, we start identifying mass properties, powered instruments like refrigerators, incubators, different components like that to meet unique requirements for the vehicle if it needs power.
The visiting vehicle lead actually means what? What's your responsibility here?
Well, I'm responsible for, again, meeting that hardware's requirements, ensuring we can fly it safely on the vehicle, ensuring the vehicle has the resources to receive it and get it to station.
In some cases, if we're talking about science experiments, those things are known fairly far in advance.
That's correct.
Years, 5 years?
Well, again, from a year's perspective is strategic plan. Tactical we look at within a year. So for me, I start really looking at the details at a year.
At 1 year.
At 1 year.
And it's, I guess, then within that time period that you're looking at the more mundane things like maybe clothing and other things.
You're right, because then we have crew. We know what sizes they are and things like that. And then within 6 months, we've identified their food, their clothing, all the science equipment, the things we need to repair and maintenance and service within that time period that this vehicle is going to be on orbit. And so those details flesh out at that time.
The long-range planning is done higher up the food chain, as you
Correct.
say, right? They're thinking in terms of what we know we're going to need in the long term, but the more planning, the more detailed planning, I guess, is what comes in this 12-month lead up?
Correct. 12 to 6 months.
Does that take a whole year, or would you like more time?
Well, it does. I mean, we have to identify the things for the vehicle. You know, what's the total mass of this? Some things are heavier or lighter than others, and so we develop. And of course, that picture changes as we evolve, as we get closer to launch. If we slip, we may change some of the components that are flying that are needed in that time frame. So there's some flexibility in being able to move cargo from one visiting vehicle to the other as we really approach the launch window.
You mentioned a couple times worrying about mass properties and just how specific, how accurate does that need to be? For someone who's not in the business, it would seem like, whether it weighs a pound or a pound and a half, so what? Would be okay, right? Not so much here.
Well, when you're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds of cargo, it adds up. So yes, we have to. The vehicle is limited to a total amount of mass it can carry to orbit, and of course we try to optimize and use every ounce of that. And so yes, we worry about the ounces at the end.
It's not just the total weight then, but it's how it's distributed within the vehicle.
That's correct. So there's vehicle weight NCG concerns.
That center of gravity, right?
Center of gravity of the vehicle. And so as the commercial vehicle folks, when they receive our cargo, of course we're weighing and measuring the CG of large bags so it matches their models when they install it in the vehicle.
When a Cygnus vehicle, this one or another one that you're working on, when it launches, does that mean your job's over?
No, I'm the lead for the Cygnus vehicles, so I've got a backup that's working the next flight. That's now in October, and then I'm already planning. I'm already inside 1 year for Orb 4, which is next spring, So we're already planning for that flight, the cargo that flies on that flight.
Does your job end when it gets off the launch pad, or are you still following this one all through
I
the
will
rest of the
follow
mission?
this one because part of taking cargo to the ISS, this vehicle does not return. We don't get cargo back. We actually use it as a disposal vehicle. So we're also looking at what trash is available. So we'll load this vehicle with trash, used components and daily trash from the crew, and burn that up when it returns.
And you've got the same kind of weight and CG worries.
The same worries go into that. Yes, we track every bag of trash, every used ORU that goes in each bag, and we communicate that to the Cygnus guys, and they may tell us that this particular bag needs to be in a specific location in the vehicle for return.
Space even on a returning vehicle like Cygnus is pretty important. Earlier this week during the mission management team meeting, I saw you get called up to give a report on how much space was still available on something that was coming home.
That's true. Yes.
People want to make sure that because they want to get everything off the station we can, I guess.
Correct. Correct. So in an ideal situation, we will use every bit of mass we can going uphill, and we'll use every bit of volume and mass we have to throw away trash when the vehicle leaves.
So as you mentioned, you're already working on on all the future Cygnus missions, I guess, from what you say, right?
Well, we do have some ideas of big payloads that fly throughout the life of this contract, so yes. But again, we start looking at the details inside of a year.
Be very interesting knowing a little more about how it gets packed when you see it get off the launch pad. Right?
Exactly.
Floyd, thanks very much for a couple of minutes here to give us some insight into what goes into packing one of these things. Floyd Booker is the Orbital 2 visiting vehicle lead.